Hi, welcome to the series of videos on GMAT preparation for the quantitative reasoning section. So, the quantitative reasoning section in your GMAT exam has two types of questions. One is problem solving and the other is data sufficiency. Problem solving is where you have a basic question and 5 answer choices. You have to select the one that suits it the best. And data sufficiency, you are given one question and 2 statements. You will have to check whether the information given in the statement is enough to answer the question, and accordingly you will be having your answer choices. You will have to select one of those. Today's topic is geometry, and we will be seeing some data sufficiency questions on the topic of geometry. So, to start with, the answer choices in data sufficiency questions are as follows. A means answer option A means statement 1 alone is sufficient, but statement 2 alone is not sufficient to answer the question. And answer option B is when statement 2 alone is sufficient to answer the question, but statement 1 alone is not sufficient. Answer option C is when both statements together are sufficient, but neither statement alone is sufficient to answer the question. Answer option D is when each statement alone is sufficient to answer the question. And answer option E is when statements 1 and 2 together are not sufficient to answer your question. These are the standard basic answer options for your data sufficiency questions. Let's look at the first question. What is the area of the triangular region ABC? Okay, you're given a triangle ABC and they're asking you what is the area of the triangle. Okay, area we know is half base into height. Here base is AC and height is BD. So, let us see, statement 1 tells us that BD into AC is equals to 20. So, yes, you can calculate the area. Area is nothing but half AC into BD. So, you will have half of this, that is 10, but you do not need to calculate the area. You can you only need to say whether or not the information given is sufficient to answer the question. So, yes, this information is sufficient to answer the question. Whereas statement 2 tells us that x is equals to 45. So, this is x degrees, the angle BAC is equals to 45 degrees. But this tells us nothing about the length of the triangle. Therefore, this is insufficient to answer the question. Therefore, the answer is answer option A. The statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer the question, but statement 2 alone is not sufficient to answer the question. Let's look at the next question now. In the figure given, PQR-STU are identical equilateral triangles and PQ is equals to 6. What is the perimeter of the polygon PQW-TUVR? So, PQW TUVR, these are the points that come out. You need to find the perimeter of that. The perimeter of this, that is the length of this outer path figure that is formed is equals to the perimeter of triangle, we need to find the perimeter of PQW TUVR, which is nothing but perimeter of triangle PQR plus perimeter of triangle STU minus the perimeter of the triangle SWV. Now, we are also given in the question statement that PQ is equals to 6 and their equilateral triangles PQR and STU are identical equal triangles. So, therefore, the perimeter of triangle PQR will be its identical and equilateral triangles. Therefore, it is 3 into 6, that is 18 centimeters. No, we are not told the units of it. So, 3 into 6, that is 18, and therefore, the perimeter of triangle STU is also equal to 3 into 6 because it is a similar equilateral triangle, that is equals to 18. Therefore, the perimeter, now to calculate this perimeter of PQW TUVR, we know the perimeter of PQR and perimeter of STU, but what we do not know is the perimeter of this triangle SWV. So, here let us look at statement 1. Statement 1, this tells us that SWV has a perimeter of, the perimeter of triangle SWV is equals to 9. Now substituting that into this equation here, we will definitely be able to calculate the perimeter of the outside figure, that is figure that's formed, that's PQWTUR. Therefore, this is sufficient to answer your question. Now, let us look at the statement 2 here. Statement 2 says that VW has a length of 3.5, but we know nothing about the rest of the triangle, that is SWV. We do not know what SV is and we do not know what SW is. Therefore, this is not sufficient to answer the question, because we do not know that, we cannot calculate the perimeter of SWV. Therefore, this is not sufficient or insufficient to answer the question. Therefore, the answer is answer option A, where statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer the question, where statement 2 alone is not sufficient to answer the question. Let us look at the next question now. The triangle has side DC of square as its base. What is the area of the shaded region? Okay, they are asking you the area of the shaded region. So, for that you need to know the area of the square and then subtract the area of triangle from it. So, let us see what statement 1 is telling us. Statement 1 is saying that dm is equals to 5, but it is not commenting on whether what the other sides of the triangle are. So, we cannot calculate the area of triangle, nor can we calculate the area of the square from here. Therefore, this is not insufficient information to answer the question. Let us look at statement 2. Statement 2 tells us that M is the midpoint of side AB. Okay. So, we can say that if each side of the square is A, then this will become A by 2 and this will become A by 2. But still we do not know anything about any of the lengths. Therefore, still this is insufficient as well. This piece of information is insufficient to answer the question. Now, let us look at statements 1 and 2 together. So, when we look at them together, we will know that dm is equals to 5 and also that M is a midpoint of side AB. Okay. So, when M is a midpoint of side AB and these two sides are A and A by 2, using a Pythagoras theorem, you will be able to say that dm is equals to, dm square is equals to A square plus A by 2 whole square. Substituting the value of dm, you can find the value of A, that is side of the square. Hence, you can calculate the area of the square, and the area of the triangle DMC also can be calculated. It will be half into base, that is length of the side of the square, into its height will also be, since this is a midpoint, this when you draw up a perpendicular, it will also be same as the height of the square, and the height of the triangle will be the same. So, the area will be half into A square, A into A. So, A square by 2. Therefore, the area can be calculated. We do not actually need to do the calculations. We can just say that this information is sufficient to answer the question. That is all we need to know. Therefore, the answer is answer option C. When statement 1 alone is not sufficient to answer the question, statement 2 alone is not sufficient to answer the question, but together they can be, they are sufficient to answer the question. So, answer is option C. Let us see the next question now. Are all sides of a quadrilateral ABCD equal? Okay. So, they are asking us whether the sides of the quadrilateral ABCD are equal. This first statement is telling us that diagonals of ABCD bisect each other at right angles. If the diagonals bisect each other at right angles, then the only possible figure is either it is a rhombus or it is a square. Only in rhombus and square do the diagonals bisect each other at right angles. Therefore, when it is rhombus and square, both these figures have all sides equal. So, you can definitely say that yes, all sides are equal. Therefore, the statement 1 is sufficient to answer the question. Okay. Now, let us look at statement number 2. ABCD is a parallelogram with 3 equal sides. If ABCD is a parallelogram with 3 equal sides, then definitely pair of opposite sides are equal. Therefore, all 4 sides will be equal. All 4 sides have to be equal if 3 sides are equal. Therefore, yes, you can answer the question, and hence the statement 2 is also sufficient to answer the question. Therefore, the answer option is D, where each statement alone is sufficient to answer the question. Let's move to the next question. A non-compressible ball in the shape of a sphere is to be passed through a square opening in a board. What is the perimeter of the opening? Okay, they are telling us there is a ball that is non-compressible and it needs to be passed through a square opening in the board. So, what is the perimeter of the opening? So, first statement tells us that the radius of the ball is equals to 2 inches. Okay, they are telling us that it is equal to 2 inches, but they are not commenting anything on the size of the opening, that is size of the square, because it can be much larger than the radius of the ball or the diameter of the ball to let the ball to be passed through. So, this information is not sufficient on its own to answer whether or not what the perimeter of your opening is. Okay. Second statement tells us that the square opening is the smallest square opening through which the ball will fit. Okay, the square opening is the smallest square opening through which the ball. Now we can definitely say that the square side of the square will be equals to the diameter of the sphere, because it is the smallest possible opening through which the ball will fit. For the ball to fit through the square, it will have to sit like this, where if you draw a diameter, that is r and r, it will be exactly equal to the side of the square. A will be equals to 2r. It will have to satisfy this requirement. Side of the square is equals to diameter of the sphere. Okay, but we can still not tell perimeter of the opening is, because we only have this, but we do not have in the statement 2, we do not have the value of the diameter of the sphere. Okay, so this is also not, this information is also insufficient to give you what the perimeter of the opening is. Let us see statements 1 and 2 together. So, 1 and 2 together, where you are given the radius of the ball is equals to 2 inches and the side of the square will be equal to diameter of the sphere, that is equals to 2 into 2, that is 4. Therefore, the perimeter you can easily calculate. Perimeter of the square is equals to 4 times side, that is 4 into 4 is equals to 16 inches. Hence, yes, statements 1 and 2 together are sufficient to answer the question. Let us move to the next question now. For a circle with center point P, chord XY is perpendicular bisector of radius AP. A is a point on the edge of the circle. What is the length of the chord XY? Here we are given that XY is perpendicular bisector of radius AP. So, this is r by 2 and this will also be r by 2. And we know that when you join center, that is P, point on circumference, each of this will be equal to radius, that is r, and this is given as perpendicular bisector. So, this is perpendicular. So, using Pythagoras theorem, this is r by 2, this is r, we can figure out that this will be equals to root 3 r by 2. Using Pythagoras theorem, if you make the calculations of r square under root of r square minus r by 2 whole square, you will have under root of r square minus r square by 4, which will be equals to, taking LCM as 4, you will have under root of 4r square minus r square is 3r square. So, that will be equal to root 3r divided by 2. Okay. So, thus this triangle becomes a 90-60-30 triangle, because 1 is to root 3 by 2 is to 1 by 2. These are the ratio of the sides. So, the angle opposite root 3 by 2 will be 60 and angle opposite r by 2 will be 30. This will also be 60 and 30. These will be similar triangles. Now, what are they asking us? What is the length of XY? Okay, the length of XY is twice root 3 by 2, side of this triangle, and this is root 3 by 2 and this is root 3 by 2. So, therefore, the length of XY is equals to twice root 3 by 2r, which is equals to root 3r. Now let's see what the information given is. First piece of information given is the circumference of circle P is twice the area of circle P. Circumference, that is 2 pi r, is equals to twice of the area. 2 times area is pi r square. Therefore, pi gets cancelled, 2 gets cancelled, r is equals to r square. When you cancel it out, you get r is equal to 1. Therefore, yes, its information is sufficient. R is equals to 1 can be substituted here. xy is equals to √3r. So, therefore, this is sufficient information to calculate what length of xy is. Let us look at statement 2. Statement 2 tells us that arc XAY is equals to 2 pi by 3. We know that the arc XAY subtends an angle of 120 at the center, that is 60 plus 60, 120 at the center. So, the length can be calculated as 120 divided by 360 into 2 pi r. You can equate this to the given length of the arc XAY. So, when we cancel this 120 goes 3 times through 360, 2 pi gets cancelled, 3 gets cancelled, again r comes out to be 1. Therefore, you can substitute that in xy and get that xy is equals to √3. Therefore, this is also sufficient information to answer the question. Therefore, the answer is answer option D, where each statement alone is sufficient to answer the question. Now, let us see the next question. In the figure given, RST is a triangle and the angle measures are shown as PRTQ is a line segment. What is the value of x plus y? X is an exterior angle, so x will be equals to sum of the opposite interior angles, that is S and T. So, x will be equals to S plus T, and y is also an exterior angle for the triangle RST. So, it will be sum of the opposite interior angles R and S. So, y will be equals to R plus S, and they are asking us what the value of x plus y is. From here we know that x plus y is equals to S plus T plus R plus S, which is equals to R plus S plus T plus S. R plus S plus T is the sum of 3 interior angles in the triangle. R plus S plus T is sum of 3 interior angles of a triangle, which is equals to 180. So, 180 plus S is what is the value of x plus y. So, let us look at the first statement here. First statement is giving us that S is equals to 40. Therefore, this is sufficient information to answer the question. X plus y is 180 plus S, that comes out to be 180 plus 40, that is 220. And statement 2 tells us R is equals to 70, but here we do not know what S is because we do not know what T is. We are neither given the value of T or S. Therefore, since we do not know the value of S, therefore, this information is not sufficient to answer the question. Therefore, answer is answer option A, where statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer the question, but statement 2 alone is not sufficient to answer the question. Let us look at the next question now. In the figure given, the center of the circle is O and the measure of angle CAO is 60 degrees. What is the perimeter of triangle OAC? Okay. So, they are saying that this is 60 degrees and these two are the radius of the circle O with center O. Therefore, these two will be equal. So, these two sides of a triangle are equal. When they are equal, then opposite angles will also be equal. If this is 60 degrees, this will also be 60 degrees. And the sum of 3 angles of a triangle are equal to 180 degrees. To make the sum 180, this angle will also be equal to 60 degrees. Sum of the 3 angles of a triangle are 180 degrees, that is why. We are asked what is the perimeter of triangle OAC. So, perimeter of triangle OAC will be equals to 3 times R, because these two are equal and we equated that this is a 60-60-60 triangle. When we calculated the angles, this will also be R. It is an equilateral triangle. So, let us look at what statement 1 is telling us. Statement 1 is telling us the arc CDA is 16 pi greater than the length of arc ABC. Okay. The length of arc CDA. CDA is subtending an angle that is this. 360 minus 60 will be 300. So CDA will be equals to 300 divided by 360 into 2 pi r, and this is equals to 16 pi plus arc length of ABC is nothing but 60. It subtends an angle of 60 at the center. 60 by 360 into 2 pi r. So this is a single equation in a single unknown, that is r is the only unknown. Therefore, you can calculate r, and hence so you can calculate the perimeter of triangle OAC, which is 3r. Therefore, we don't need to actually do the calculations, because all we need to say is whether or not the information is sufficient. This information is sufficient to answer the question. Let's look at statement 2. Statement 2 is telling us that the area of the triangle OAC is equals to 36√3. Triangle OAC area will be equals to √3 by 4 into side square, because it's an equilateral triangle and side is equals to r square. So again you have r is equals to r square is equals to 36 into 4. You can calculate what r is from here and substitute that into this again. You will get the value of what is the perimeter of triangle OAC. Therefore, this information is also sufficient to answer the question. Hence, the answer is answer option D, where each alone is sufficient to answer the question. Those were some sample questions on the topic of geometry for the data sufficiency type of questions for the quantitative reasoning section of GMAT. Hope they were clear. Thanks for watching.